Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, 12 lines from the top from the two dots. The Gemara is discussing Truma, and we said Truma is the very first thing that a person who has a field and has produce from that field must mafrish. Truma goes to the Kohen. Midiarais, it's any amount, no fixed amount. Midirabanan, they said it's 1/40th, 1/50th, or 1/60th. He gives that to the Kohen, and now becomes Kodesh in the hands of the Kohen. Only the Kohen and his household may eat that Truma. If a non-Kohen eats that Truma, if he eats it, b'mezid, he's chayev misa b'dei shamayim. And he also must return the principal. If he ate it inadvertently, b'shoigig, then he must repay it by then giving back the principal and adding a choimesh, a fifth. That which he is returning must be produce, so that it becomes now again truma in the hands of the kohen. Says the Gemara, bringing the following brisa: what constitutes when one eats truma that he's going to be chayiv to repay that truma to the bailin, to the kohen? Says the Gemara, Ton Rabbon, ha'oichel kazayis truma mishalem keren v'chomish. The Tana says he eats a kazayis of truma, then he's going to then be required to return the chomesh together with that principal to his kohen. Abba Shol oimer ad sheyeh boy shaveh pruta. Abba Shol says until he ate a shaveh pruta, that's the amount that will obligate him to return not only the principal but also the additional 20%, the chomesh. Abba Shol oimer ad sheyeh boy shav. Oh, that's Abba Shol. My time of the Tanakama. Ask the Gemara, what is the reason why the Tanakama requires that it be a kazayis? Omar Kro, he brings the following pasuk. I'll read you the pasuk. V'ish ki yoichal kodesh bishgaga. One who eats, a non-kohen who eats truma b'shoigeg. V'yosaf chamishisoy alav. Not only does he have to then give the principal back, but he has to add a fifth. V'nosan like kohen as a kodesh, and give back to the kohen kodesh, meaning crop, produce that will return to the kohen, that will now become truma in the kohen's hands once again. So he brings the pasuk, and this is the reason why he said it has to be that a full kazayis is eaten to be required to then return the keren and a chomesh. It says, Omar Krok, v'ish ki yoichal kodesh bishgoga. Since the pasuk says that he ate, now eating to have chashivus of achila must be a kazayis, and therefore a minimum of a kazayis must be eaten for the non-kohen to have to return the principal together with the chomesh. The Abba Shol, my time, what's the reason why he says it should be a shaveh pruto? Or makro, that very pasuk that we just brought states v'nosan, that he gives back, he returns back the payment to the kohen. Ve'ein nesina pachas mishav pruta, and there is no repayment less than a shaveh pruta. So from here he learns out it must be that he ate, he consumed a shaveh pruta, thereby he has to return the principal with a chomesh. But if it's not a shaveh pruta, then not. Ask the Gemara now, once we have these psukim, both the word achila as well as the word v'nosan, what does each one do with the other word, with the other part of the pasuk? The idach, now that you just said that noisein v'nosan comes to teach me a shaveh pruta Abba Shol, then nami hoksiv v'yoichal, you also have to grapple, you have to also explain out the word v'yoichal. Yoichal means he ate, and you don't require that it be a kazayis. So what do you do with the word yochel? Hahu prat lemazik hudios. It comes to then exclude somebody who then damaged the truma. A non-kohen, he, in this case, inadvertently damaged the truma, that he will not be required to then repay the kohen. It's only if he consumed it. V'idoch v'tanakama haksiv v'nosan. And the Tanakama, who again, he darshins yoichal to teach me there has to be a kazayis. What does he do with the word v'nosan? Hahu mi boile ledovar haroi liyos kodesh. he uses that word v'nosan to teach me it has to be a repayment, like the rest of the verse goes on to say, v'nosan like coin es hakodesh, that is going to be produce, that is going to then be returned back to the coin, whereby it will become kodesh once again, it will become truma, to the exclusion of money. That would not be something that's viable and acceptable to return to the kohen. The Gemara now brings the following brayso Tana Rabbanan: Ha'eichel truma pachois mikezayis mishalem mesaker ve'ino mishalem mesachomesh. If he consumed truma, the non-kohen consumed less than a kezayis, then he pays the keren, the principal, but he does not pay the chomesh. Heichidami, the Gemara wants to understand the words of this Tana, of this brayso. Either less beishava pruta, if it's not a shave pruta, then keren nami lo l'shalim. He should not have to pay the keren because it doesn't have any value. It's not considered to be significant enough to require to be repaying even the principal. The is ba shava pruta, then chomesh nami l'shalim. And if it is a full shava pruta, then he should also be required to then add a chomesh on top of the keren that he's repaying the kohen. Answers the Gemara, la'olam di'is ba shava pruta. Indeed, the brayso is talking about where he did then consume a shava pruta. Afilu hachi kiven the les bekezayis mishal mesaker ve'ino mishal mesachomesh. But because he did not consume a full kezayis, thereby he will only have to pay the principal, the keren, and not add a chomesh of 20%. Amura rabbanon kamed Rab Papa. The Rabbanon, the students, said before Rab Papa, "Hadeloi ka'abashol." This must not be like Abba Shol's opinion, because the ikabashol ha'omar kivan sheyesh ba shava pruta afal gav the less bekazayis. Abba Shol's opinion is so long as it has the non-kohen consumed a shave pruta, then that is enough to require that he pay back not only the principal but add a chomesh. And yet over here it says that because he did not consume a full kezayis, he doesn't have to add the chomesh. So this must not be according to Abba Shol. Omar lu Rab Papa responded to these Talmidim, Afilu tema Abba Shol. You can even explain this brayso according to Abba Shol. Because Abba Shol tarti boy. Abba Shol requires both things. He requires both that it be a shava pruta, the value of what he consumed, and it also must be that he consumed an amount of a kezayis. And therefore over here, since he didn't consume an amount of a kezayis, thereby he doesn't have to add the chomesh. Ask the Gemara, Umi boy Abba Shol tarti. They're asking Rab Papa, the Gemara, indeed does Rabba Shol require both things? V'hot nan, it states in a Tosefta, Abba Shol oimer, es sheyesh boy shava pruta chayiv b'tashlumin, es she'ein boy shava pruta eino chayiv b'tashlumin. He says emphatically over here, what seems to be very clearly stated, that if there is indeed a shava pruta, he must then pay back not only the keren but also the chomesh. And if there is not a shava pruta, then it implies, then he says that he does not have to add the shava pruta. So we see from here that it's only the factor of shava pruta. Amru loi, they said to Rab Papa, loi amru shava pruta ela li'inyan mi'ila bilvad aval truma eino chayv ad sheyeh bo kezayis. They said to him that, not to Rab Papa. I said Amrullah. The Chacham said to Abba Shol that which they said that they only require a shava pruta. That's only regards to meila, when a person who used the consecrated property hekdesh and he used a shava pruta worth that, and he did so b'shogeg, that's going to be chayiv him meila. However, in regards to the consumption of truma, that's not sufficient that he eats a shava pruta. There, it has to be that he ate a kezayis. That's how the Chacham respond to Abba Shol. The im isa, and if it's true, like Rab Papa is saying, that Abba Shol requires both things, then why did they respond in this way? Kivan sheyesh bo kezayis mi boile. They should have said that since that there is in a kazayis, meaning to say, not only that there is a eating of a shava pruta, but it also has to be it also has to be a kazayis. And since they didn't say it in that manner, it implies that Rav Papa that Abba Shaul does not require both things. His only factor, his only determining consideration is that it be a shava pruta. Tiyufta, the Gemara indeed says that this is a tiyufta on Rav Papa's thesis that Abba Shaul requires both. And therefore it's a refutation. Indeed, Abba Shaul only requires a shava pruta to be consumed. The Gemara now points out, Va'af Rav Papa Hadar, but even Rav Papa, who did want to say that Abba Shaul requires both a shava pruta as well as a kazayis, even Rav Papa was chayzer boy, and he himself retracted and said, indeed, Abba Shaul only requires the factor of eating it to be a shava pruta. And now the Gemara explains how we see that Rav Papa was chayzer. First, it quotes a brisa, the Tanya, v'chata b'shgaga. It states in regards to Me'ilah, the Pasuk says that he made a chet b'shoigeg in regard to the eating of or consuming of the Me'ilah, using the Me'ilah. Prat lemezi, the Brisa says this comes to exclude somebody who then used the consecrated property b'mezid. V'haloi dinhu, the Gemara, the Brisa asks, it's a din. We don't have to use a Pasuk to teach me that it's excluding bringing a carbon for somebody who then was moyel b'mezid. That we already know from the following kal v'chomer. Uma sha'ar mitzvah shechayi bohen kares, poiter bohen es hamezid. Other mitzvahs that have the stringency that if they do that avera would be chayiv kares if they do so b'shoigeg. So therefore, if they do b'mezid, they're going to be potter from a carbon. Me'ilah she'ein ba kares she'ein din shepoter hamezid. Me'ilah does not have the stringency of being chayiv kares. There, if the person does do so b'mezid, certainly you should not have to then bring a carbon. Whereby the Bryce is saying you do not have to learn from the posuk v'chatota b'shgaga prat lemezid. We already know from a kal v'chaymer from the fact that other mitzvahs that are chayiv kares, they are potter from bringing a carbon. Says the Gemara, loy imamarta b'shar mitzvah shekein lo chayiv bahen misa. Other mitzvahs they don't have misa b'dei shomayim, and therefore when you do b'mezi they're not chayiv a carbon. But in regards to me'ilah, since it does have misa b'dei shomayim, which is so severe, the Gemara understands at this point, even more severe than the kares, thereby maybe you would have a chi of carbon if you do b'mezid. Tarma b'me'ilah shechayiv b'misa. I might think that you are chayiv a carbon. That indeed, if you do so b'mezid. Talmud Lorma b'shgaga prat l'mezid. That's why I need the pasuk b'shgaga. That only if you did b'shoigeg are you going to be chayiv. Prat l'mezid. If you did it b'mezid, you're not going to be chayiv a carbon. V'omar le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok. Again, so shoigeg will mechayiv you the carbon, but not b'mezid. V'omar le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok le Rav Chia bar Avin. Hai Tana mi'ikara alima le kares u'v'soif alima le misa. This Tana, this bright that we just quoted, first began by saying that kares is more stringent, using a kal v'chaymer, then turned around and said the misa b'dei shomayim, that the Mila possesses, is even more stringent. Therefore, you cannot learn from Shekal v'chaymer. So there seems to be an internal contradiction within the Tana. What is more stringent? Is it the kares or is it the misa b'dei shomayim? V'omar le hochik omar. This is what he meant to say when he added that Mila has misa. Not to say it's more stringent, but rather the following. Loi imamarta b'shar mitzvah shekein lo chayiv b'hen misa b'pachas mikezayis. Other mitzvahs that do have misa b'dei shamayim, it doesn't have it when it's consuming less than a kazayis. Whereas Mila, even if it's less than a kazayis, it will become chayiv in misa b'dei shamayim. Tarma b'mi'ilasha chayiv b'misa pachas mikezayis. If a person is moyel, there even if it's less than a kazayis, he's going to be chayiv. That was the argument why you cannot learn from the Kavacham, and whereby we had to bring the pasuk of v'chata b'shgaga. Only there is the chayiv for a korban b'mi'ila, but prat lemezid, he won't be chayiv for a korban if he did so b'mezid. V'omar lei. So now he says back to him. This is now Rav Nachum. This is now Reb Chia bar Avin to Rav Nachum bar Yitzchok. Tanuach daitecha sheheinachtes daite. He says, may your das be settled, just like you settled my own das. Notice he was complimenting him based on his argument. V'omar lei, but he said back to him, this is now coming back, the response of Rav Nachum bar Yitzchok to Rav Chia bar Avin. My nichusa, why did I then settle your mind? What I said ultimately was not a good argument, because the Rabbi Rav Sheshes shodu beid narga, because they smashed it, they wielded it with an axe, meaning they destroyed my argument as follows. They asked, Man shamas lei, the Omar hazid b'mila b'misa. Who is the one who lets us know, who teaches us that indeed when one does mi'ila b'mezid, that he's going to be chayiv b'misa? We're on top of Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph. Rebbe, after all, it is Rebbe, they said. The Tanya, for we learn in the following brisa, the Tanya, Hazid b'mila, one who does mi'ila b'mezid, he uses consecrated property. Hekdesh b'mezid, so Rebbe oimer misa. V'chacham oimrim b'hazora. Rebbe says he's chayiv misa b'dei shomayim, and the chacham arguing say he's chayiv malchus as an azhora. My time with Rebbe, why does Rebbe say that he's chayiv misa b'dei shomayim? Omar Rabbi Abohu Gomar, he learns a gezerah shava of chet mitruma. The two psukim are as follows. I'll read you the psukim inside. The first pasuk that says chet, that's in regards to meila. Nefesh ki timol mol vechata bishkaga. That's the pasuk that we brought before. Vechata chet bishkaga. He used meila bishkaga, and then another pasuk that says chet in regards to truma. Veshamru es mishmarti v'lo yisu alav chet. Umeisu boy v'goimer. So it says over there by truma, a person who will then consume truma in a state of tuma, he will be chayiv misa. So here it states a gzeir shav of chet mi truma ma truma b'misa af mi'ila b'misa. Just as truma is chayiv misa, therefore we learn out the gzeir shava to mi'ila that he's also chayiv misa. Umina, from that very gezerah shav, we'll also learn ma truma b'kezayis af mi'ila b'kezayis. Just as truma requires a consumption of kezayis, so true mi'ila requires a consumption of kezayis. So we see over here that that's Rebbe's limud. In which case, that which he was bringing before is not going to be valid. Umaskiv l'Rav Papa. Now Rav Papa asks, why do you have to then do away with that limud? B'mai de Rabbi v'Rabbanan svirulei. Why do you say that the Rebbe is like the Rabbanan? In other words, the Rabban that we said before, who argue on Abba Shol and say that the requirement of consumption for a non-kohen to eat truma is a kezayis. Who said that he has to hold like the Rabban who are arguing with Abba Shol? Perhaps he holds like Rabbi Abba Shol himself. Says Rav Papa. Umaski Rav Papa, mimai de Rebbe kirabanan svirulei. Who says that Rebbe has to hold like the Rabban, the bar plukta of Abba Shol, and say the consumption of truma is a kezayis? Dilma ke Abba Shol svirulei do'o mayesh ba shava pruta afagav the less be kezayis. Maybe Rebbe holds like Abba Shol, whereby the amount that a person has to then consume as a non-kohen of the truma is only a shava pruta. Says the Gemara, Rav Papa, who the Oma Abba Shol tardi boy. But Rav Papa was the one that said that Abba Shol holds both things, the consumption of a shava pruta and a kezayis. Elamai, says the Gemara, El Shmamina Hodar Bey. From here we see it's demonstrated clearly that Rav Papa does not hold with what he said originally. He was chayzer boy. He retracted. And indeed, he now holds that indeed, even Abba Shol only requires the consumption of a shava pruta.